Welcome, welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Okay, into the share, and here we are. And of course, we're doing Torah Temimah. Of course.
Okay.
All right, so we were actually stopped in the middle of a Torah Temimah comment, right? We know this is his, of course, up here, if you can follow my cursor, is the parts that he takes from the rabbinic sources, whether it's the Talmud or the Midrashim or Zohar or something. And he also tries to formulate it. He doesn't just quote verbatim, he tries to rework the language a little bit so that it's easier to handle and easier to understand. And then underneath, he has, as you can see, these incredibly full footnotes, either explaining or raising issues or something. I mean, it's a real intellectual romp that he has underneath here. So we were talking about the curse of the snake, right? And the main comment was, if you covet something that really you're not entitled to, you may lose what you got. Not only will you not get what you want, but you will lose what you have already. And we could have left it off in that, right? So here we go. He digs deeper here, and that's one of the things I love about this amazing commentary. V'tam hadavar shenit kalel hanachash, and the reason why the snake was cursed le'echol afar, to eat dust, right? What's the significance of dust you shall eat, right? Yesh lomar, one could say, al pi hakavua b'seder teva, something that's been established in the order of nature, mazon habraim, regarding the what the creatures eat, right? The food of creatures. What's the principle? Ki kol nivra mitparnes mi nivra pachot me'eko. So that because every creature sustains itself from something that is from another creature that is less, and I'm going to have to say value. And I realize that's a very judgmental kind of statement. And listen, this is you have to understand, but it's sort of saying it is giving a level of value, you might say. And whoever's unmuted, please mute because I can hear feedback. So if you need to say something, just raise your hand and unmute, and please feel free to do that. Okay, thank you. So he gives examples. What exactly is he talking about? And you'll see it's okay. Kamo shehatzmachim nizonim me'afar, just as he says plants, right, are fed from the dust, right, from the earth. V'hachai mihatzmachim, and living things are then dependent on plants, right? V'chai, this looks like midaber. This is what it seems to me, right? And animals that are capable of speech, right? Mechai stami. I believe that's what he's talking about. Stami, from the word satum, I think, meaning, who are mute. So in other words, animals that are able to make sounds, perhaps, from animals that are mute. The point is, you understand that we're talking about development, right? In terms of, I think that what he's saying is sort of is a little bit easier to understand and maybe to accept once he starts giving his examples. V'lachen miseda toldato, and because of its birth, right? How it was the generations, right, of its birth, so to speak. Remember, hayan hachash mitparnes mitzmachim, right? The 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 snake or the serpent would have been sustained from vegetation. Now that's sort of interesting because he just said something. If I'm in fact translating this accurately, the snake spoke, right? Which would have put it at the top of the food chain. And here he's saying vegetarian. So where do we get this? Well, the answer is that at least at that point in development, human beings were vegetarians, and it's only after Noah saves all the animals that human beings are allowed to eat animals. In fact, I suspect perhaps, and I don't have sufficient evidence, no animal was anything but vegetarian. Possibly, possibly. But human beings, we can say for certain, because God says to Adam and Eve, you may eat of all the plants, and not the animals. And not only that, after Noah gets off the ark, it says explicitly now that human beings can enjoy meat. So that would be why the serpent would have also been on the same kind of level and just been a vegetarian. I think that's the best I can do with this. V'ata, but now, keshechata, when the serpent sinned, v'yarad madregato, then he went down from his step. In other words, he went down a step. Interesting thought here is when a person doesn't listen to their best side, and when in fact, and of course, the nature of sinning isn't just making a mistake, it isn't just committing a crime, right? Sinning has to do with the relationship you have now created with your universe, with the universe, with the creator of the universe. So sinning has an additional level of obnoxiousness, if you could say, right? That's the difference between sinning and committing a crime. So you go down a step. Shav lemadrega pachuta, so he returns to a lesser stage, a lesser mimenu shahaya shehi madrega tatzmachim. So now he had to sustain himself on a step below, right, which would have been originally the step of the stage of the plant life, uvedinhu, and so automatically, right, a fortiori, or no, not a fortiori, sorry. And it would make sense. It would be logical. Shetzarich lead parnes me'afar. Just as the plants have to sustain themselves from the earth, he would, kamo hatzmachim, just like the plants. So just interesting sort of stuff that and part of what I love about this is that it expands one's vision of things and understanding, right? And again, I feel all this stuff has huge literary implications and stuff like that. Okay. Comment if you wish. Just raise your hand. Okay. All right. Okay. On to the next one. So, mikol habema umikol chayat hasadeh. So he is going to be cursed from every domesticated animal, right? And from every wild beast of the field. So the question, this is in Bechorot, Tractate Bechorot. Im mebehema nitkala. If you're already saying that the serpent is to be cursed more than domesticated animals, mechaya lo kol shechen. Well, then wouldn't he automatically be more cursed than the beast of the field if you're saying that? So in other words, it doesn't make sense. Why should, if you're going to say that he's cursed more than domesticated animals, it doesn't make sense then to say, and from all the wild beasts, because the domesticated animals are on a higher plane than the wild beasts of the field. Okay? So there's a little note here. Near Batam Hakal Vachomer, that's what this abbreviation is. It would be appear in the reasoning of the reason for this Kal Vachomer, and the Kal Vachomer is an a fortiori argument. In other words, it's saying if let's work it the other way. Had it said that he was more cursed than the wild animals, well, if the serpent was more cursed more than the wild animals, it doesn't mean that he's more cursed than the beast than the domesticated animals. That's why when it's the wrong way around, there's a problem. Mishum denahug ba'alma, right? Because in general, the custom is keshemevarchin or mekalin et mishahu, that when you bless or when you curse something or someone, mashvin oto be'erech b'nei mino, one contrasts that person to people of the same, what we're saying is of the same species. In other words, the nature, you notice that the nature of the curse is, and he's going to give examples. So let me give an example. Let's see. Just explaining. Sheyeh beyitron, that if he's going to be blessed, he should have more, or bepachot, or less, mehem, from them. In other words, that part of the nature of quote being cursed is in contrast to people who are would be your peers. That's where the nature of this curse comes in terms of cursing. It's one of the ways in which curses are constructed. Imadam, if he's a person, if you're cursing a human being, be'erech hanashim, you're going to compare him to other human beings. Im zachar, if he's male, be'erech zacharim, you're going to compare him and curse him or bless him in relationship to other males. Ve'im nekeva, and if female, be'erech nekeva, with regards to other females. Ulefize, and if we're basing it on this, right, according to this, mikevan shehanachash hu min chaya, since the serpent is a type of wild beast, halo haya darush, it would have made sense, okay, would have seemed apparent, shekilulato tiyeh be'erech kol hachayot, that it should simply have said, you will be more cursed than the beasts of the field. Why mention the domesticated animals? Aval lo be'erech habeimot, that's exactly what he's saying, but not in contrast to the domesticated animals. So, ela inyanhu, but what is really going on here is, shekol kach meruba kilulato, that the serpent was so cursed, ad shenit kalel gam be'erech behemot, that he was cursed even in contrast or in comparison to other domesticated animals. Af she'enin b'nei mino, even though they don't belong to the same order. The imkain, and if this is the case, pashut hadavar, it becomes clear. Shebe'erech b'nei mino hachayot b'vadai nidakel. So in that case, in other words, he's explaining the rationale of this question, right? So it would be very clear that in comparison to his peers, right, hachayot, which are the wild animals, b'vadai nidakel, obviously he would be cursed. V'zehu sheparich, and this is the basis of this challenge, right? Im mi behema nitkalel, that the challenge of if he is already cursed more than domesticated animals, mechaya lo kol shekain, wouldn't he be automatically more cursed than the other wild animals? V'imkain, and if this is the case, mikevan shekatuv mikodem mikol habeima, and since the scripture, this verse, precedes mikol beheima, from every domesticated animal, lama li od lichtov, why would it be necessary to write in addition umikol chayat hasadeh, and from every beast of the field? So shehu be'erech mana, because that is the wild beasts of the field are worth, let's say, 100 selas. Okay, if we're going to put a monetary value to it, just by way of giving an illustration, bichlal matayim, and it would be included in 200 selas. That's the way to understand the relationship of the domesticated animals to the wild beasts, right? So that's understanding the contrast between wild beasts and domesticated animals. So, going on. Ela lomar lacha, but what it's to tell you, to inform you, keshem shenit kalala habema mechaya, that just as it's telling you something deeper here, that just as that domesticated animals, okay, are were cursed, mechaya, above, interesting here, right? More than wild animals, echad leshiva, 1 in 7. And this is referring to the ability to conceive, right? We'll see. Umaynihu. In other words, it's saying here that domesticated animals were cursed sevenfold than wild animals. And mainihu, what are we talking about? Chamor mechatul. So this is interesting, though. Okay. Made sense when I prepared it, right? Okay. So what are we saying? Chamor mechatul. Okay. So a donkey over a cat. Kach, so I'm wondering to myself, are we saying that a cat is not really domesticated when you compare it to a chamor, to a donkey? Kach nitkalel hu mi behema. So likewise, the serpent itself was cursed more than a domesticated animal, achat lesheva, sevenfold. Deheve shav shani, meaning once in 7 years. Okay. So the story here, let me just explain, okay, is that a cat apparently is able to conceive every 52 days, and a donkey is able to conceive once in 7 years. And so what we're saying is once a year, forgive me. In other words, 7 times 52 days, forgive me, right? So a donkey is capable of conceiving once every year, and a cat is capable of conceiving every 52 days. So, kach nitkalel hu mi behema achat leshiva. So we're saying that the serpent was cursed to only be able to conceive once every 7 years. Heve shav sheni, right? And the shev, I think this is sheva. It could be a misprint. Second. Remez le'iburo. So now he's explaining. This is a reference to its ability to conceive, shel nachash, of a serpent, deheve sheva shanim, which is 7 years. So iburo, that's not such an easy term to translate. Because you can either say iburo has to do with gestation, right? Pregnancy or conception. And so what happened is there is this parallel statement in the Midrash Rabbah, which we have studied in another class, and where they were talking exactly about this subject. And the Art Scroll translation there, as I recollect, talked about Iburo as being gestation. And I also looked up, there's an English translation of this part of Torah Temimah, right, by Rabbi Scharfeld, I believe, or Scharfstein, and he translated it as conception. So this is, these are puzzles. There's still stuff that needs to be worked out, at least eventually. Okay, so here we go. Let's see what Torah Temimah has to say. Vahachi mashma, and this is what the implication is. Arur hu mikol habema, you are more cursed than any domesticated animal. Kama shehi arura yoter minachaya. So that what it's saying is really that when it's using the behema and the chaya as definitions of the curse, it's saying that just as a domesticated animal is cursed more than 7 times more than a wild animal, you are going to be cursed, the serpent, 7 times more. Kishem shehabaiman nitkalala minachaya alachat sheva. Just as a domesticated animal is cursed more than a wild animal, 1 in 7. Umay nihu, and what's the example? Chamor michatul bishana. Yes, so the donkey is capable of conceiving once a year, and 7 times more than a cat, sheva pamim nudbeh. In other words, 7 times 52. Kach nitkael hu min habeima, just so is the serpent more cursed than domesticated animals. Kagon mi behema gasa tme'a, right? Just for example, this is a large domesticated animal like a donkey. Tme'a, impure, meaning not ungulate and not cloven hoofed, right? Echad l'sheva, one 1 in 7. The behema gasa tme'ah, that when it comes to a non-kosher, an impure cat, a large animal, domesticated animal, shnei masar chodesh, it could be period, it could mean period of gestation, or once a year it can conceive. V'chashuv sheva pamim yud bet chodesh, and if you then calculate 7 times 12 months, hayinu echad l'sheva, right? So that's 1 time in 7, hein sheva shanim. In other words, 7 years. Okay. I mean, getting through all of that, right? And wading through all of that information, that leaves me with a question of, sort of, well, what is really the point, right? Is there, because I like to believe that these statements aren't just made off the cuff, and they're not just being made to be cute, but they have some significance. And the question is, when we're dealing with a situation like this, is there what would be the deeper lesson that is to be found here? And right now, I am stumped. I have to say, other than it's trying to, of course, define when it says cursed, what does it mean cursed for the serpent? Because with the woman, we're gonna know what it is, and with the serpent, of course, it does talk about eating the dust of the earth, and having to be in the enmity and the those elements of it, and the so. But then it says, the fact that it's bothered, right? Our sages are bothered by the fact that it says both domesticated animal and wild beast. This might not bother us, but it bothers them because they feel, again, there is significance in the wording of the Bible. If we say that it is, in fact, the divine word, then we're going to say that there's a value to every expression. For the most part, it's 99.9% of the time, there's going to be a reason, some deeper reason. So again, of course, is this in fact hold up to scientific evidence? I don't know. I don't believe that snakes only conceive once every 7 years. I'd be interested to know if that is in fact the case. I don't anticipate it. And on the other hand, if we're saying that this is more of a literary statement, we certainly are making some kind of judgment call regarding the ability to conceive and the ability to procreate and the blessing of procreation. Okay, one more point on this, and before we leave it for today, and that is the nature of blessing, right? That if you ask yourself, what exactly do we mean when the Torah uses the term blessed? And it occurred to me that since the very first time the word blessing is used, the blessing is associated with be fruitful and multiply. That is the blessing, being fruitful and multiplying. And so that in general, blessing means having an abundance of something. If you are blessed with something, it means you have an abundance of it, and it means the other implication is you never have to worry about running out of it, of lacking it. So it gives us at least that as a deeper understanding of blessing. And of course, its opposite being cursed, which would be simply the opposite of that. And then, of course, this all sort of fits into the context of procreation. And with that, we will conclude for today. So I'm going to mark the spot. All right. I still have you with me. That's great. Okay. Any questions for the record before I stop the recording? Or comments? Doesn't have to be a question. Deborah, are you trying to say something? Because you're muted.
Just mumbling to myself. There's a
Oh,
lot.
okay.
I have my I'm just reading the entire passage. There's a lot here, a lot of stuff here to look through.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop the recording.